Robert Downey Jr. receives mysterious envelope on Christmas Eve. The contents will leave him speechless. Robert Downey Jr. sits in his cozy living room on Christmas Eve, the warm glow of the fire crackling in the fireplace, casting a soft light over the room. Festive decorations, carefully arranged, bring a sense of joy to the space. Twinkling lights on the tree, garlands draped across the mantel, and stockings hanging with care. Inside, however, the atmosphere is peaceful, almost serene. It's the first time in months that Robert has found a moment of true solitude. The hustle of his career, the relentless public attention, and the constant demands of his professional and personal life have all taken their toll. As much as he loves his family, friends, and the bustling energy of his life, tonight he craves silence. A rare break from the limelight, a night to unwind, reflect, and embrace the quiet. With a glass of wine in hand, he settles into the plush armchair by the fire, the crackling of the flames the only sound filling the space. He stares into the dancing embers, lost in thought, his mind wandering to the year that's almost past. There were triumphs, certainly, but also challenges, heartaches, and moments of doubt. Yet, in this stillness, he feels a sense of gratitude. This is his moment. It's time to breathe. Suddenly, there's a soft knock at the door. It's gentle, almost hesitant, like a whisper from the world outside. Robert's brow furrows slightly as he glances up, momentarily startled from his peaceful reverie. He wasn't expecting anyone. No friends, no family, no visitors tonight. He rises from the chair, placing his wine on the table beside him, and walks toward the door. He opens it cautiously, his heart beating a little faster now. Maybe a neighbor or a caroler, he thinks, perhaps someone in need of a little holiday cheer. But when he peers outside, the porch is empty. There's no one in sight, just the faint echo of footsteps in the distance, lost in the soft hush of the snowfall. On the doorstep, however, lies something unusual, a plain, unmarked envelope, its edges slightly curled from the cold. No return address, no stamp, just the faintest impression of an inked message on the front. Curiosity piqued, Robert kneels down to pick it up. He doesn't know why, but something about the simplicity of the envelope feels, important. He takes a breath, his fingers brushing the smooth paper as he steps back inside, the door clicking softly behind him. The silence of the house surrounds him once more. He stares at the envelope for a moment, weighing his next move. Should he open it? Who could have left it? His rational mind tells him it's probably just some fan's heartfelt letter, but there's an odd, almost magnetic pull to it. After a brief hesitation, he tears open the envelope, unfolding the paper inside. The message, written in elegant flowing script, is brief. Tonight, you will have a choice. What you do with it will shape the course of the year to come. Look outside. Look directly at all the vapors. A chill runs down his spine. The cryptic nature of the note unsettles him, but his curiosity only deepens. Without thinking, Robert walks back to the door, opens it again, and steps onto the porch. The night seems eerily quiet now, the snow falling in heavier swirls around him, as if the world is holding its breath. And then he sees it. At the edge of his driveway, a figure stands, barely visible in the swirling snow. They're tall, their silhouette vague, but undeniably present. The figure doesn't move, just stands there, waiting. Robert's pulse quickens. This wasn't what he expected, but then again, nothing about this night has felt predictable. The choice, the message, and now this mysterious figure. He feels his heart racing as he steps off the porch, walking slowly toward the figure. What is this? A prank? A sign? As he gets closer, the figure turns, and for a moment, he's unsure what to do. This wasn't a typical Christmas Eve. Something was happening. Something that could change everything.
It was...
The figure says nothing. It simply holds out a small, intricately wrapped box. Robert takes it, his fingers brushing against the cold, delicate wrapping. He looks at the box for a moment, then back at the figure, who remains silent, waiting. No. A part of him feels afraid, but another part, an instinct deep inside, urges him to open it. But what does this box mean? What does it signify? As the figure starts to walk away, Robert feels the weight of the choice before him. There's no going back now. Whatever this is, it's a crossroads. The kind of moment that could change the course of his life, his year, or even his future. Robert stands there in the falling snow, holding the box, his mind swirling with questions. What comes next? What will he decide? And, most importantly, what will the consequences be? Robert settles back into his chair by the fire, the warmth from the crackling flames enveloping him, as he holds the envelope in his hands. The curiosity gnawing at him has only deepened, and with a slow, deliberate motion, he tears open the envelope, revealing the single sheet of old, yellowed paper inside. The paper feels fragile, the edges slightly frayed, as if it's been kept for a long time. Dated, wanton scribbled over. He unfolds it carefully, the soft rustle of the paper a stark contrast to the otherwise still atmosphere of the room. The handwriting is elegant, flowing, almost too perfect, like something from another time. The ink appears to have faded slightly, but the words are still sharp and clear. Robert reads the message aloud, almost as if testing the reality of what he's seeing. You've changed more lives than you know. The time has come to face the past. This key opens a door you once closed. Go to the address below by midnight, and all will be revealed. His breath catches in his throat as he finishes reading. The words seem to hang in the air, their meaning elusive, like a riddle he's not yet able to solve. The message is deeply personal, but it's also haunting. The reference to a past he thought was behind him, the mysterious key, the promise of revelations, it all feels too specific to be a coincidence. Robert looks down at the envelope again, his fingers brushing against the edges of the paper, as if to make sure it's real. Then his gaze shifts to the brass key that had been tucked inside the envelope. He picks it up, the cold metal sending a slight shiver through his fingers. It's old-fashioned, heavy, and intricate, with delicate engravings along its shaft. The weight of it feels significant, almost as though it holds the power to unlock more than just a door. The key feels like a tangible connection to something long past, something he'd closed off, locked away in the recesses of his memory. He turns the key over in his hand, his mind racing. What is this? A symbol of his past? A reminder of something or someone he had left behind? At the bottom of the letter, beneath the cryptic message, an address is scrawled hastily, as if the writer was in a hurry. Robert leans in, studying the address closely. It's a location on the outskirts of the city, a place he doesn't recognize. The area seems unfamiliar, almost forgotten, as if it's been bypassed by time and development. A chill runs through him, the sense that something significant awaits him there, a place that might hold the answers to a part of his life he thought he'd buried long ago. He takes a deep breath, the air suddenly heavy with the weight of the unknown. His mind spins with possibilities, each one more implausible than the last. Is this some elaborate prank? A fan taking things too far, playing an intricate game with his life? Or worse, a message from someone who knows too much? Someone from his past? The idea feels too personal, too specific to dismiss. Robert sets the letter down on the table. His thoughts a whirlwind. What could it mean? The time has come to face the past. The words echo in his mind, and his heart begins to race. He knows there are parts of his past he's tried to forget, moments he's long since sealed away. The idea of revisiting those memories, of confronting whatever has been left unresolved, sends a shiver down his spine. But there's also something else, a pull, a sense of urgency. The letter is clear. The opportunity for answers will slip away if he doesn't act quickly. By midnight. The thought lingers. It's already late, the hours ticking away as the clock continues its slow march toward the deadline. Robert stands, pacing the room as his thoughts swirl. He looks at the key in his hand once more. The past, a part of him that's been locked away, is suddenly demanding to be confronted. What is this key unlocking? And who or what is behind this message? His mind flashes to his past, the choices he's made, the people he's met, the moments that have shaped him. There's a feeling, a whisper of something long forgotten tugging at the edges of his memory. Could this be related to someone or something he once knew, something he thought was behind him, buried beneath years of fame, success, and distractions? He glances at the clock on the wall. Time is running out. There's a sense of inevitability in the air now, as though this is a moment he can't ignore, something that has been set into motion, whether he likes it or not. With a final, resolute breath, Robert makes up his mind. He grabs his coat, slipping it on quickly, and heads for the door. The key, still cold in his pocket. The letter, now crumpled slightly, in his other hand. There's no turning back now. Whatever awaits him at that address, whatever secrets the night holds, he will face them. The past is calling, and tonight he has no choice but to answer. With a sudden movement, he closes the door. As the night falls, completely calm, as he steps into the night, the snow falling gently around him, Robert can't shake the feeling that this is more than just a message. This is a turning point, one that will lead him into the unknown, and he's not sure if he's ready for what he's about to discover. Despite every instinct telling him to let it go, Robert cannot shake the pull of the letter. His curiosity is a powerful force, outweighing his better judgment. The idea of facing whatever it is from his past, whatever this letter and the mysterious key represent, feels unavoidable. With a deep breath, he grabs his coat from the hook by the door, its heavy fabric offering little comfort against the cold storm brewing outside. The key slips into his pocket with a heavy weight, as if it's already beginning to dictate the course of his night. Stepping out into the snow, the world around him is quieter than he's ever known it to be. The usual hum of the city, the sounds of cars, pedestrians, and distant chatter is absent. It's as if time itself has slowed, leaving only the soft crunch of his boots in the snow. The calm of Christmas Eve is so deep, so surreal, that it almost feels like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Robert doesn't question why he's driving tonight. He just does. The engine hums steadily beneath him as the car cuts through the quiet streets. He glances at the address scrawled on the letter, his fingers tightening around the steering wheel. The address leads him away from the heart of the city, out toward its forgotten outskirts, places he hasn't thought about in years. As he passes familiar landmarks, they feel strangely distant, as though they belong to a time long past. His mind races with questions that only seem to grow the closer he gets to his destination. Who sent the letter? What door could this key possibly unlock? And why now, of all times? The past feels like a foggy memory, a place he thought he'd left behind. And yet, with every mile he drives, that fog seems to lift just a little more, revealing glimpses of something he can't quite grasp. The roads become less traveled as he moves further out of the city. The lights grow fewer, the buildings more dilapidated, until, finally, he reaches a street that feels unfamiliar, like it belongs to a different era. The city's edge is long behind him now, and ahead looms an imposing structure, a warehouse. The building is old. Its steel frame rusted and worn, windows long since shattered or boarded up. It's the kind of place people avoid, a relic of another time. The eerie quiet of the night wraps around the warehouse like a shroud, the snow swirling in gusts, making the scene look even more isolated. Robert slows the car, his headlights casting long shadows across the building's broken exterior. He hesitates for a moment, the place sending an unsettling chill down his spine. He doesn't remember ever visiting this place, and yet there's a strange sense of recognition in his gut, a feeling he can't place, like he's been here before, or perhaps should have been here. He parks the car, the engine's hum dying in the cold night air. The key in his pocket seems heavier now, as if calling him to step forward. The silence is deafening, broken only by the soft hiss of the wind and the crunch of snow underfoot. Robert takes a deep breath, steadying himself. The place looks abandoned, forgotten, but something about it, something about the stillness, feels wrong. He walks toward the entrance, his boots echoing through the empty night. As he draws closer, the air around him feels colder, the temperature dropping sharply. His heart begins to beat faster, each step heavier than the last. He stops just short of the door, his hand instinctively reaching for the key in his pocket. The brass feels cold against his skin, as if it has absorbed the chill of the night, and for a brief moment, he wonders if it might be the last key he ever uses. Robert glances around, the darkness of the surroundings pressing in on him. The place is abandoned, yet there's a sense of life here, something in the air, an energy that is unmistakable. The windows of the warehouse are dark, but he feels as if something is watching him from inside, even though there's no movement, no sound. With a quiet, almost reluctant sigh, Robert steps forward and inserts the key into the lock. The metal turns easily, as though it's been waiting for this moment for a long time. The door creaks open, its old hinges groaning in protest. The cold air spills out from inside, and Robert steps over the threshold into the dim, musty interior. The warehouse is cavernous and dark, the remnants of old machinery and broken crates littering the floor. Dust hangs in the air, thick and untouched. The silence is almost oppressive, the kind of quiet that settles deep into your bones. And yet, as Robert takes a cautious step inside, he feels an inexplicable sense of familiarity, like he's walked these halls before, like this place is connected to him in ways he can't explain. His heart races in his chest, each beat more urgent than the last. The shadows seem to stretch toward him, and the further he goes, the more it feels like the past itself is reaching out, trying to pull him back. The key's weight in his pocket seems to press harder now, a constant reminder that he's not just here by chance. He's here because something or someone has been waiting for him. A chill runs down his spine as he steps further into the warehouse, the old building feeling as though it's alive in its own way, watching, waiting. What will he find inside? And why, after all these years, has this door been reopened? Robert approaches the warehouse, the soft crunch of snow beneath his boots, the only sound in the eerie stillness of the night. The snow continues to fall in thick, heavy flakes, dusting his coat and making the world around him feel more distant, more isolated. His breath forms clouds in the cold air, a visible reminder of the night's chill. The warehouse looms before him like an ancient sentinel, dark and silent, its broken windows like eyes watching his every move. He pauses in front of a small, rusted side entrance. The key in his pocket feels impossibly heavy now, as though its very weight is pressing him forward into something he's not sure he's ready for. With a deep breath, Robert slips the key into the lock. It turns with an unexpected ease, and the door creaks open slowly, the sound echoing unnervingly in the cold night. The hinges groan as if disturbed after years of dormancy, and for a moment, Robert wonders if the entire building might awaken with him. Inside, the air is freezing, the darkness all-consuming. The faint smell of mildew and aged wood fills his nostrils as he steps over the threshold. His breath is visible in the frigid air, each exhale a puff of steam that dissipates into the vast emptiness. The room is barren, save for one object that stands in the center, a box covered in a thick layer of dust, as though it's been left untouched for years. Its presence is out of place in the otherwise empty space, and Robert's heart beats a little faster as he steps closer, drawn to it despite the gnawing sense of foreboding. He kneels beside the box, the dust shifting beneath his weight as he gently lifts the lid. A soft creak fills the silence as the box opens, revealing a collection of items that seem as if they belong to another time. Inside, there are old photographs, yellowed newspaper clippings, and a few worn, forgotten objects. A child's toy with a chipped smile, a faded scarf with frayed edges. The contents are a strange mix of personal mementos, and as Robert sifts through them, a wave of nostalgia crashes over him, accompanied by a sense of unease. The photographs are the most striking. They're all in black and white, their edges curling with age. He picks up one in particular, its image slightly smudged. It's a picture of him, younger than he is now, standing beside a woman and a small boy. His heart skips a beat as he stares at the image. At first he doesn't recognize the people in the photo. Their faces are unfamiliar, their presence foreign. His mind races as he searches for any clue, any recollection that might bring them back to him. But for a moment, nothing clicks. Then, as he studies the photo more closely, something inside him shifts. A distant fragmented memory starts to surface, like an old film reel flickering to life. The woman in the photograph, her face, her smile, begins to spark recognition. He can almost hear her laugh, a soft sound that he's long since forgotten. The boy beside her, he's familiar too, though the memory is still clouded. Robert's fingers tremble slightly as he holds the photograph, the edges curling in his hands as the pieces start to fall into place. The memories are faint at first, like shadows on the edge of his mind, but they grow clearer with each passing second. A name surfaces, barely a whisper in his thoughts. Mia. The woman in the photo is Mia, someone he had known years ago. But how? The boy, too. He's someone he should know, someone important. The memory is like a door creaking open, but the details are still fuzzy, half-formed, just out of reach. A wave of emotion crashes over him, a deep sense of loss, a sudden recognition of something he had buried so deeply, perhaps on purpose. Why can't I remember more? The thought lingers in his mind, and his chest tightens with an inexplicable ache. He shifts through the other items in the box, his hands moving mechanically as his thoughts spiral. More photographs, more clippings, each piece adding to the growing sense that he's unearthed something he wasn't supposed to find. A crumpled newspaper article catches his eye. The headline is faded but still legible. Local woman and child found missing. The words send a jolt of panic through him. The missing woman and child, Mia and the boy. This article is about them, but why is it here, with him? Why does it feel like this story is connected to his own? He flips through the article, his eyes scanning the details. The police were unable to locate the pair after they disappeared one winter evening. The story is cold, clinical, and there's nothing in it that gives him any clear answers. But beneath the text, a small handwritten note in the margin catches his attention. It's brief, but it's written in the same elegant handwriting as the letter he received earlier. The past must be faced. The answers lie in what was lost. Lawrence Babbitt. Robert's pulse quickens as he stares at the note. It's not a coincidence. The letter, the key, the box, it's all connected. But how? Why had he been chosen to confront this part of his past? Why now? He sits back on his heels, the weight of the mystery pressing down on him. His hand instinctively reaches for the key in his pocket once more. It feels colder now, heavier, as if it's waiting for him to unlock the next step in this strange, unsettling journey. The photographs, the newspaper clippings, the faint memories, it all points to something unresolved, something from his past that has been hidden away for far too long. But what does it all mean? What truth lies buried beneath the dust and the forgotten pieces of his life? Robert's breath catches as the final pieces of the puzzle begin to form, and the room around him seems to close in. Whatever answers this warehouse holds, they're waiting for him, just out of reach. And whether he's ready or not, it's time to face them. The memory comes rushing back like a tidal wave, overwhelming and sharp, its edges cutting through the haze of time. Robert's heart pounds as the pieces fall into place. Years ago, long before he became the world-famous actor he is today, he had been walking the streets during the holiday season, a time when the world seemed a little quieter, a little more reflective. It was a cold night, colder than usual, and the city's holiday lights did little to combat the chill in the air. He had been on his way to a meeting, perhaps preoccupied with the usual pressures of his budding career, when he noticed them, a woman and her young son, bundled in tattered clothes, standing near an alley, their faces pale and gaunt from hunger and exposure. They were looking for a place to sleep, a roof over their heads, and Robert couldn't just walk by. He had stopped, not thinking much of it at the time, only that something in their eyes had struck him. Perhaps it was the exhaustion or the quiet dignity in their struggle, but it moved him in a way nothing had before. Without hesitation, Robert approached them. He didn't consider his fame or wealth, or whether it might be too much to take on. It was a simple decision, driven by a deep empathy that he couldn't ignore. He helped them find a warm place to stay for the night, covering their rent for a few weeks, and made sure they had food to eat. He didn't stop there. The boy, no older than 5 or 6, had a sad, quiet look in his eyes, and Robert couldn't bear to think of him spending the holidays in such a way. So, he bought the boy a few toys. Small things, but things that would bring him some joy. At the time, Robert had thought little of it. It was a simple act of kindness, something he could do without a second thought. It felt like nothing more than a passing moment, a small good deed that would soon be forgotten. And maybe it would have been, had he not been swept up in the whirlwind of fame and stardom that would soon follow. The years had passed quickly, and the memory of that winter night faded into the background of his busy life. But now, as he stares at the photograph in the box, everything shifts. The faces of the woman and child are no longer blurry memories. They're real. They're alive in his mind. His heart drops as he realizes something he hadn't fully understood until now. They hadn't forgotten him. The family, whose lives he had touched so briefly, had held on to that moment, had carried it with them all these years. It wasn't just a fleeting encounter to them. His actions had meant more than he had ever realized. The letter, the key, the warehouse, all of it makes sense now. They had found him. This family had found him, and their gratitude, their lives changed by his kindness, had brought them back to him. Robert had never expected that one small, impulsive decision would ripple outward and have such a profound impact. The simplicity of his gesture had planted a seed, one that had grown into something far more significant than he could have imagined. He sits back on his heels, his fingers still gripping the photograph as he tries to process it all. What happened to them? He wonders, where did they go after that night? His mind races with questions. What had come of the woman and the boy? Had they found stability? Had they been able to rebuild their lives? He had done what he could at the time, but what had happened after he left them? It's then that Robert realizes the full weight of the letter's message. You've changed more lives than you know. It's not just about a fleeting moment of charity. It's about a lasting impact, one that he never saw coming, one that he had never fully understood. The family's gratitude had remained with them, and now, years later, they had come back to remind him of that impact. They hadn't forgotten the man who helped them when no one else did. As he holds the photograph, Robert feels a rush of emotions. There's a sense of pride, yes, but it's mixed with something deeper, a quiet ache for the years that have passed, for the lives that have changed without his knowledge. What else had they endured? What had they become? It's a bittersweet realization that his life, in all its chaos and fame, has touched others in ways he will never fully understand. The memory, now vivid and clear, has reopened something in him, a door he had long since closed. Robert stands, his mind spinning, the key still heavy in his pocket. He knows now that his journey isn't over. There are more answers waiting for him, and whatever lies ahead in this abandoned warehouse, he has to face it. It's not just about his past anymore. It's about the lives he's touched, the lives that have touched him, and the redemption that may lie waiting in the shadows. With a final glance at the photograph, Robert knows it's time to uncover the rest of the story. The woman, the boy, the kindness, the impact. There's more to this story than he could have ever imagined, and it's time he learns the truth, no matter how painful or unexpected it may be. The warehouse may hold the answers, but it's clear now that it's not just a building. It's a place of reckoning, a place where the past is about to collide with the present in ways he's not ready for. But he's ready, or at least he has to be. The key is in his hand, and he can't turn back now. At the bottom of the box, buried beneath layers of photographs and clippings, Robert's fingers brush against a piece of paper, slightly thicker than the others. He pulls it out, his breath catching as he sees the familiar handwriting. His eyes scan the signature at the bottom. David. The same boy from the photograph, the one he had helped so many years ago, the one he had all but forgotten in the rush of his career. The words on the page begin to blur as Robert's hands tremble, the weight of the letter's significance sinking in. He takes a moment to steady himself, then begins to read. The letter is written in a neat, purposeful hand, and as Robert reads David's words, his heart pounds with an intensity he hadn't expected. The letter begins with a simple greeting, one that immediately feels personal, like the words are meant only for him. "Dear Robert," it begins. "I don't know if you'll remember me. I doubt you would, but I know you will remember my mother. I'm David, the boy you helped all those years ago. I want to tell you something I've never had the courage to say until now." Robert stops, his throat tightening. He holds the letter up to his chest, the memories of that night, the cold winter air, the sound of the boy's laugh, coming back in a rush. He's not sure if he's ready to read further, but something deep inside urges him to continue. "Good." David goes on to explain how Robert's kindness had saved their lives. The woman, his mother, had been on the brink of giving up. The winter had been especially cruel that year, and they had nothing. No money, no shelter, no hope. David recounts how his mother had been so close to surrendering to the weight of their circumstances, but Robert's intervention had given them a lifeline. Without him, without his generosity, they would have been lost. His mother had told him many times how she felt the warmth of Christmas in Robert's actions, how he had brought light into their darkest days. Reading this, Robert feels a lump in his throat, the enormity of his actions hitting him with a force he had never anticipated. It was just a small gesture to him, a brief moment of charity, but it had been everything to them. His mind races, wondering if they had ever reached out, if they had ever tried to find him to say thank you. But David continues, explaining the years that followed. David had gone on to grow up and make a successful career for himself. But instead of letting the hard circumstances of his youth define him, he had used them as fuel. He had carried the lessons of generosity resilience, and hope that Robert had unknowingly imparted to him that Christmas. As David's life unfolded, those lessons had shaped the man he had become. He had worked tirelessly to build a life for himself, but in doing so, he had never forgotten the man who had changed everything for him and his mother. In the difference of a few hours, he had met his sons for the first time. David writes how, over the years, he had quietly followed Robert's career from the shadows, ensuring that the right opportunities came his way at crucial moments in his professional life. He had become a hidden figure in Robert's network, a silent benefactor who had helped Robert behind the scenes, making sure that things fell into place when it mattered most. David had worked in the shadows, not for recognition, but because he had made a promise to himself to repay the man who had given them hope when no one else did. Robert's eyes widen as the implications of this revelation sink in. The people who had helped him through difficult times, the ones who had given him a helping hand when it seemed like everything was falling apart. He wonders now how many of those moments had been quietly orchestrated by David, the boy he had once saved. The pieces of his career and life begin to fall into place in a way that he hadn't expected, and the gratitude he feels for the unspoken support is overwhelming. David ends the letter with a final, simple statement that hits Robert like a punch to the gut. Robert, you saved us, and now it's my turn to say thank you. Merry Christmas, Robert. Your kindness didn't just change our lives, it changed yours too. Robert stares at the words for what feels like an eternity, the gravity of their meaning settling deep within him. He had never expected anything in return for his act of kindness. In fact, he had forgotten about it entirely, caught up in the whirlwind of his career. But in this quiet, surreal moment, he realizes that David's words aren't just an expression of gratitude. They are a full-circle reflection of how lives are interwoven in ways we can never predict. The weight of David's statement lingers in the air. It changed your life too. Robert takes a deep breath, his eyes scanning the letter one more time. The connection, the ripple effect of his actions, has come full circle. He thinks back to the time when he helped the family, so sure that it had been a small, fleeting moment in his life. But now, the reality sets in, that one decision had set off a chain of events that had shaped not only David's life, but Robert's as well. The quiet night outside the warehouse suddenly feels different. The snow continues to fall, but Robert no longer feels alone. The past, with all its hidden layers and forgotten faces, has come rushing back, and he understands now that his life has been a part of a much larger story, one that connects him to people he never even knew he had impacted. The letter from David is more than just gratitude. It is a testament to the power of kindness, the far-reaching effects of even the smallest gestures, and the unexpected ways our lives intersect with those of others. Robert sits back feeling a warmth that no fire could bring. For the first time in a long while, he understands the true meaning of the season. It's not just about gifts or fame. It's about the connections we make, the lives we touch, and the ways we unknowingly change the world for the better. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest gift of all. As Robert stands in the cold, empty warehouse, the weight of the revelation sinks in. The chill in the air seems to intensify around him, but it's not just the winter night that has made his skin prickle. It's the realization that the small, seemingly inconsequential act of kindness he had performed all those years ago had altered the course of someone's life in ways he could never have imagined. He had long forgotten that moment, tucked away in the distant recesses of his memory, one of many fleeting gestures of charity that had come and gone in the rush of his busy life. But for David and his mother, it had meant the world. The act of helping them had sparked something far bigger than he could have ever anticipated. It had been a turning point, a lifeline that had not only kept them alive, but had set off a chain of events that would come full circle, winding its way back to Robert in ways he couldn't even comprehend. And now, standing in this abandoned space with the old key in his hand and the letter in his lap, the enormity of that impact washes over him. David's words in the letter echo in his mind. Your kindness didn't just change our lives, it changed yours too. Robert swallows hard, feeling the weight of those words resonate deep within him. He had never thought about the long-term effects of his actions, never considered that something so small, buying a family a meal or giving a child a toy, could create ripples that stretched across the years, into places and moments he'd never see. But now, it's clear. That one choice, that one act of compassion, had quietly shaped David's life, which in turn had influenced Robert's own success. Robert feels a rush of emotions: gratitude, humility, awe. The gratitude is overwhelming, a deep, quiet thanks for a life he has been given, for the chance to change someone else's world, even when he hadn't fully understood what that change meant. The humility is more personal, a quiet recognition of how little he had truly understood the power of his own choices, how much he had taken for granted in his own life. Such he had always believed in the power of small acts of kindness, of the idea that a simple gesture could make a difference. But now, standing here, in the wake of this revelation, he feels as though he has seen the proof of that belief manifest in ways that transcend anything he could have imagined. It's a humbling experience for him. For years, Robert had been caught up in the frenzy of fame and success, wrapped in the world of red carpets, premieres, and accolades. It had been easy to forget the people who had shaped him, the ones who had helped him when he was just a young actor trying to make a name for himself, trying to navigate a world that had once been unfamiliar and overwhelming. But David and his mother had been there, just as he had been there for them in their time of need. They were part of the foundation of who he was, part of the story that had shaped his career, and he hadn't even known it. As he stands alone in the cold, dark warehouse, Robert's perspective shifts. This place, this forgotten corner of the city, has become something much more than a dilapidated building. It's a crossroads between the past and present, between the man he had been and the man he had become. It's a testament to the idea that life is not just about the moments that stand out, the flashy successes or failures. It's also about the quiet, everyday acts that might seem insignificant at the time, but that can create a ripple effect that lasts long after they've been forgotten. For the first time, Robert feels the weight of what it means to be truly connected, to the people who have touched his life, to the ones he has touched, whether he knew it or not. It's a humbling thought. In the grand scheme of things, he's just one person in a vast, complex world. But his choices, however small, have the power to echo through time, to change the lives of others in ways he can't even begin to understand. There's a deep sense of awe that follows. As he holds the letter, Robert understands that kindness is not just about the immediate reward or the recognition. It's about the long-term impact, the way that even a small act of compassion can set a life on a different course, lead to a future that may never have been possible without that moment of help. And in that sense, his life, his career, his success, his fame is not solely the result of his own efforts, but is also, in part, the result of those he had unknowingly helped along the way. A small smile forms on Robert's lips, a quiet acknowledgement of the unexpected beauty of this moment. He had often been consumed by the pressure of his career, by the demands of the industry, by the need to be constantly striving for more. But now, in the stillness of the warehouse, he feels a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Robert doesn't know what comes next, what other surprises this night will bring, but he knows one thing for certain: his life and his career are forever changed, not just by his own actions, but by the actions of others, by David, by his mother, by the people he has helped and who have helped him in return. The full circle of it all is humbling and beautiful, a reminder that the true power of kindness lies in its ability to ripple outward, to change the world in ways that are beyond our understanding. And as he steps away from the box, the photographs, and the letter, the weight of the key in his pocket feels less heavy, less burdensome. It feels like a reminder that, in the end, it's not just the big moments that matter, but the small ones that shape us, that guide us, and that remind us of the interconnectedness of all lives. And, for Robert, that is the greatest gift he could have ever received. As Robert stands in the quiet, empty warehouse, the weight of everything he has just uncovered presses upon him. He begins to reflect on the profound realization that people's lives are far more interconnected than anyone could ever truly grasp. The idea that even the smallest gesture, a brief moment of kindness, a selfless action done without thought or expectation, can create ripple effects that stretch far beyond what one could imagine, is overwhelming. In that moment, Robert sees the world differently. He understands now that every interaction, no matter how insignificant it might seem at the time, can set off a chain of events, impacting not only the people involved, but also the generations and futures they influence. The depth of this understanding fills him with awe. He thinks of the countless moments in his life when he had helped others, when he had lent a hand to a stranger, when he had offered a kind word or a generous act without thinking twice. He never expected any of it to come back to him. He did it because it was the right thing to do. But now, on this cold Christmas Eve, Robert sees the true weight of those actions. He sees how those small gestures had shaped the lives of others in ways he would never have known had he not stumbled upon that letter tonight. His small, fleeting act of kindness had changed the course of David's life, and, ultimately, his own. Setting off a chain of events that has come full circle. He feels humbled by the power of human connection, by the idea that each of us, in our own way, can change the world by changing just one life at a time. As Robert reflects on this, a deep sense of fulfillment washes over him. He's no longer caught up in the pursuit of fame, success, or validation. The glittering lights of the Christmas season, the endless red carpets, the flashing cameras, they all seem so distant now, almost irrelevant compared to the realization that kindness and compassion are the true drivers of change in this world. For the first time in a long time, he feels a profound sense of purpose, knowing that his life, in its own quiet way, has left an imprint on the world, one that may not have been seen by millions, but one that has mattered deeply to those who needed it most. This Christmas Eve, Robert has been given the greatest gift of all, proof that kindness, compassion, and love truly have the power to change the world, one life at a time. He doesn't need recognition or accolades to feel validated. The reward is in the ripple effect, the way his actions have impacted David's life and in turn his own. It's a gift that has nothing to do with material wealth or public acclaim, but is instead a gift that comes from within, a gift that transcends time and space, a gift that has no price tag, but is worth more than anything money can buy. As Robert pulls into his driveway, the crunch of the snow beneath his tires is the only sound that breaks the silence of the night. He turns off the engine and sits in the stillness for a moment, the events of the evening unfolding in his mind. He looks up at the sky, the stars shining brightly above, their twinkle reminding him of the infinite possibilities that lie ahead. It's as if the universe itself is acknowledging this moment, acknowledging the quiet power of his actions, the way his simple choice to help a struggling family has rippled through time. The cool night air fills his lungs as he exhales slowly, feeling a sense of peace he hasn't known in years. The weight of his busy life, of fame, expectations, and the constant striving for more, seems to lift from his shoulders. For the first time in a long while, he feels free. This is the gift he has been given, the deep understanding that his life, his career, and his success are not just the result of his own efforts, but the result of the kindness he has shared and the lives he has touched, often without even realizing it. Robert leans back in his seat, looking up at the stars again, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment settle in his chest. The questions that once consumed him about what's next in his career, what the next challenge will be, seem less important now. What matters is that he has lived a life that has made a difference. Until destiny breaks a new generation, the things that mattered most seem to move on. His journey has been shaped not only by the big, public moments, but by the quiet, private ones too, the acts of kindness, the times he had been there for others when they needed him most. As the snow continues to fall gently around him, Robert smiles to himself, knowing that this Christmas Eve, will be a memory he will carry with him for the rest of his life. It's a Christmas he will never forget, not because of the gifts he received, not because of the fame or the recognition, but because he has been shown the true meaning of the season. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful impact we can have on the world is in the quiet moments, the ones no one else sees. This Christmas, Robert Downey Jr. has learned the greatest lesson of all, that the greatest gift of all is the gift of changing lives, one small, compassionate act at a time.